Good evening and welcome to this year in review. 12 months came so quickly and we're about to bid goodbye to the year 2022. What a year this has been. A year of unprecedented inflation. In January 2022, that's how we started. We started inflation at 13%. But guess what? It's now 50.3%. That's how we ended November. We're yet to get December though. But the e-levy was passed, but it did not meet government expectations. The finance minister also vehemently stated that the country would never go to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout. Eventually, Ghana was forced to beg for a dance with the IMF. Also, the cedi became the worst performing currency in the world in October and later started gaining strength in December, and some say it was about the best performing currency as well. Now, fuel prices also galloped so fast that many of us could not cope. I don't know about you. Now, this created a cost of living crisis in Ghana. We had prices of goods and services skyrocketing, and the government's constant defense was, I'm sure you can sing the chorus, COVID, Russia and Ukraine war. That's the excuse that we were given. In an unprecedented move also, 85 majority MPs told the president to sack his finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Well, the minority jumped on that and filed a vote of censure against the finance minister, which failed because the majority walked out when it mattered most. We qualified also for the World Cup this year, 2022, but we could not make it past the group stages. We could not exact our revenge against Uruguay, but they also crashed, and we saw the priceless, teary face of Luis Suarez. A very eventful year indeed amidst haircuts. Now, let me bring you 12 months in 12 minutes. Let's begin with the Apieti explosion after this break. Well, it's 12 months in 12 minutes. This is the year in review here on the JoyNews channel, also on Joy 99.7 FM, myjoyonline.com. Let's begin our discussion with the Apieti explosion. This is what happened.
Nobody is asking anyone to give what they don't have, but just the little they have. They can help share it with others.
Serious. So, Mr. Speaker, this side, we don't support e-levy. We will not support e-levy. Count us out of it. They can proceed with whatever business they want to do. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, members, the Electronic Transfer Levy Bill 2021 duly read the third time and passed.
I'm happy that the House has finally found it possible to pass the e-levy bill.
Definitely, I will return. As you know, my son has been unwell, and that is why I had to come here to the United States to, be the mother and the best mother that I could be. And I'm still here, making sure that all that is settled with my son and all the authorities and the school, and it's still ongoing. I've been a deputy leader of Ghana's parliament, and I know the rules, and I know that the Privileges Committee wants me to be in parliament, but as we speak, I don't know that I've been invited. I have to be served, and I'm not aware that any such thing has been given to me. I'm just hearing it from you.
We are not going to the IMF. Whatever we do, we are not. The consequences are there. We are a proud nation. We have the resources. We have the capacity. Don't let anybody tell you. Like when Joshua, Caleb, and the 10 others went to spy on the promised land. And only 2 of them came to say that we can do it. And the 10 went around the community murmuring, you can't, We are not people of short sight.
Why don't you go to the IMF? Go to the IMF. We have shown that we have alternatives to building the economy of this country without resorting to conditionalities that will be imposed on this country. We will not go to the IMF today. We will not go to IMF tomorrow. And we are not going as long as the NPP remains in power.
I want to assure you and assure the people of Ghana that we're going to negotiate a good deal with the IMF, a deal that will allow us to revive our economy and to continue the task of building an even stronger economy than we had before.
Their criticism of my administration when we decided to go to the IMF, they said it's only lazy governments that go to the IMF. And I mean, the words they said in that past have come to haunt them. So one of the reasons why they're afraid to go to the IMF is that what they said in the past will follow them.
To say resign, will you resign because of going to the IMF when you said we're not going to the IMF?
That's not a very good question. You know, it's almost like telling a father to resign from his children because he's changed his mind. You know, there are times that decisions have to be made for the survival of a country.
When you have a situation like this woman who was, I'm not still sure whether she was in fact deported or whether she fled the country the first time and has now come back, but whatever. There still seems to be some uncertainty about it, but whichever way it is, she has become the sort of nickname for all that the Galamsey represents. And unfortunately, also for the involvement of Chinese nationals in Ghana in this particular illicit trade.
It's not everybody that is aware of it. So you need to educate us so that everybody will know that it's not everybody that knows it. So definitely you have to educate us, but you don't come and stand here and then be throwing your hands about.
Knowing already that this percentage of people haven't completed their registration, you should be ready for this kind of how should I say it, weight from the public. So when you come here and they tell you that the system is down, I mean, so are they going to extend their working hours, or they are going to close exactly at the time they usually close? All these things is going to go against the customers. So I think they should have made plans for this.
Upon consultation with the industry and in view of the challenges enumerated above, I have very reluctantly decided to grant a final conditional extension. The program will, and I'm choosing my words carefully, the program will be extended to 30th September to end on the anniversary of its commencement. That will give us 1 full year of SIM registration.
Happy is not happy this morning. You can clearly hear from her voice frustration, distress. All she's saying is that she supports the call by Guta for the shops to be closed. I asked her whether she wasn't concerned about it affecting her daily bread, and she said her money matters are even not too good anyway, so what's there to lose? She says that
the recent developments within our economy are of great concern to the greater majority of members of our caucus and our constituents. We have made our grave concern to the President through the parliamentary leadership and the leadership of the party without any positive response. We are by this medium communicating our strong desire that the President change the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State in the Finance Ministry without further delay in order to restore hope into the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy. We want to serve notice, and notice is hereby served, that until such persons as aforementioned are made to resign or removed from office
We, members of the majority caucus here in Parliament, will not participate in any business of government by or for the president by any other minister.
The fiscal recklessness obviously leading to the crash of the Ghanaian cedi, which is currently the worst performing currency in the entire globe. And then number 6 has to do with the alarming incompetence and frightening ineptitude. In fact, if he had acted fast, we could have salvaged this economy. So frightening ineptitude resulting in the collapse of the Ghanaian economy and an excruciating cost of living crisis that we are seeing.
Co-chairs, let me use this opportunity to say to the Ghanaian people what I believe. With courage, every finance minister around the world may wish to say to their people now. I am truly sorry.
You have failed. It's time to say, Ghana, you gave me an opportunity to serve you. I have served you to the best of my ability. My ability is not good enough. Bring in somebody else to do the work. Why are you still sitting there? We gave you the job. We said we don't know you again. Is it false to serve us? Is it false for you to serve us?
We wash our hands. We will wash our hands. We will wash our hands. We will wash our hands always. Jay must come. Jay must come. Jay must come. Jay must come. Jay must come.
Those in favor after the secret vote is 136. Those against, 0. Abstentions, 0. Following the terms of Article 82(1), the vote is accordingly lost.
Mr. Speaker, this budget is a campaign-day budget. And therefore, he's put the country on the path to debt restructuring, which he has announced as debt exchange program. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget is a campaign budget. Today he's unaccompanied. Where is the Vice President? He's unaccompanied.
Mr. Speaker, snuff, yes, snuff. They want to tax snuff. Snuff, they want to tax snuff. I mean, and sometimes this snuff, it relaxes the body for our grandfathers. My grandfather, I do not use snuff, but my grandfather uses the snuff in order to calm down his blood pressure. Now you are saying this snuff, this small one that is taking, you want to tax it. And they move to fruit juice and other beverages. Mr. Speaker, so what is the point again? You are taxing us when we take alcohol application and the rest, you are taking taxes from us. If you want to stop drinking application, you want to drink fruit juice, you want to also take tax from us. So do you want to kill us in this country? It's not fair. Let's stick to the alcoholic beverages, tax those people who take the cigar and what, but we those who have repented and want to take fruit juice and beverages, leave us alone. Leave us alone to live longer.
Truly, the eventual conclusion of the program will assist us in our efforts to restore stability, tackle inflation, and strengthen our currency. That is why the various ingredients of the program should be supported by all Ghanaians and all stakeholders.
That was 12 months in 12 minutes. We started off all the way from the e-levy discussion back in Parliament to the appearty. Then now we are the debt exchange program. We've seen the censure amongst others. We'll be talking about all that and more here. But remember that at the end of the program, we'll be asking you who your news personality of the year is. Also, the soundbite of the year. We'll take a look at it. And what's the presidential gaffe of the year? And also, there have been many. Has the minority served the people well? I've assembled very great minds for this program. They've been talking about these news stories the whole year without break. So you don't have to go anywhere. We'll start the discussion shortly here. My colleague, Shamima Muslim will be joining us via Zoom shortly. But in the studios, I'm so happy to be sitting with them this evening. Kojo Yangsin, the morning man, has become the evening man today, and he's the host of the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. Evans Bensa, no stranger to the evenings here on the Joy News channel, host of PM Express, and also my partner on radio for News Night. What did you say?
Partner in crime.
Partner in crime, yes, all the way, Bonnie and Clyde. So Evans Mensah and Kojo Yangsin and Alliance for Women in Media Africa convener Shamima Muslim will be joining us via Zoom. She's on Zoom. Hello, Shamima. Good evening. You can unmute so we can hear you.
Good evening, Emefa.
Good to see you. Season's greetings.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm actually unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Same to you.
Okay.
Same to you, Emefa.
Well, gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing okay.
How has it been? How has 2022 been?
2022.
Dramatic. It's been dramatic. I mean, nobody could have predicted the end from the beginning. It's not one of those years. I suppose that there are a lot of takeaways, right? Lots of lessons learned, especially for us in the media. You know, some of the stories that have come our way and the ways we've had to deal with them, and the curveballs that have been thrown at us. It's just been an education for us.
Yeah.
But for the people of Ghana who get their information through us, I just wonder, you know, what they think happened this year. What on earth went on in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, this year, I mean, they say as a journalist, you live on the bad news. Bad news is good news. I mean, forgive me if I say that, but as a journalist, that's what we live on. And if you go to journalism school, the first thing they tell you is when a dog bites a man, that's not news.
No news.
When a man bites a dog, it's news. And this year has been full of bad news. So it's very, very, very healthy, good news year in terms of that. One bad news after the other. Unfortunately, the nature of the bad news has, the implications and the impact has been seismic. It's really been a tsunami. If you take out Appiati, where its impact was felt. And it's interesting, right? Appiati was the typical textbook ground zero, where it exploded, it affects a particular community, and it's restricted. And then we have the nuclear explosion of the economic disaster.
Now you're getting into your topics.
I'll get into it. I'm just talking about the fact that if you look at it, really, this year has been very explosive in terms of the news. And there was a time.
Did you get any haircuts?
Did I?
Get haircuts?
Oh yeah, everybody
okay,
did.
Well, let me get to Shamima.
Everybody did.
Shamima, how has 2022 been in summary for you?
Well, I think that it's been a year of crescendos upon crescendos, and if we gathered all the apples in the world to bake the biggest apple pie, beg your pardon, it still won't be enough for the many people who would have to share that apple pie around to. I think that it's been a year of great lessons to
Oh dear. Okay, we'll work on Shamima's connection, but it appears that you're all in tune in terms of how the year 2022 has been. So it takes me then fast into getting your top picks so that we can start the discussion, because I know you're itching to talk about the things that happened in 2022 and the main issues. I've penciled a lot of them down, but I want to get your top, maybe let's do top 3 or top 5 if you have it. Let's go into it. Since Evans started, Evans, let's go through it.
So my top 3.
I've seen Appiati already.
My top 3, I mean, Appiati is actually not in my
okay.
top 3.
All right.
My top 3 will be decision to go to the IMF, that U-turn.
U-turn.
The U-turn. The second one, closely linked to that, will be Ken Ofori-Atta's outmaneuvering of both the rebel NPP MPs and the NDC.
You mean how he survived it?
Yeah, he survived both. He survived both sides of the house, which is unprecedented in itself. And it says a lot about the man. He is possibly the most talked about individual. If you put in the search Ken Ofori-Atta in terms of Ghana, you probably will see that he's probably the most searched, most written about individual. And I think the consensus that built around his removal was so unanimous, both within the MPP, in Parliament. James Abogsu's comments that said that there was consensus when it met was one that
and the third
would never happen again. And then the third will be Sir John's will debacle. Was a major one as well for me. If you want me to add two bonuses to it. Two bonuses, for head of the political desk. The outcome of the NDC
Congress,
MPP internal leadership elections, major surprises. You hosted the former General Secretary last week. It was a major surprise that he lost to JFK. I mean, because of the who he lost to was a big deal. And then you have the NDC one also, throwing up a major surprise of equity. Imagine winner when many thought it was a free Accra or Tokuno who had been. And then, of course, the big fight between the Ofuso Ampofo and Joseph Sulu-Keita. So that will be my fourth. And then the final, obviously, will be it's between the E-Levy and Aisha one. I think I'll go for the.
Please go for Galamsey.
I think I'll go for the E-Levy.
You go for the E-Levy?
I'll go for the E-Levy.
Okay.
I'll explain why when we come to it.
I'll add the Galamsey to it for you, but it's fine. Kojo, let's take your top 3 or 5.
Top 3. I'll do top 3. And they are represented as the 3 W's. So the first W stands for wound to me. For me, I don't think there was a story that illustrates the ability of government to completely ignore the rule of law than the Chairman Wontumi story. And I'm talking about the involvement of Akunta mining in Galamsey. I mean, JoyNews brought actual evidence, video evidence of the presence of Akunta mining in the Nimri forest. Okay, they were not supposed to be there by law. I mean, they were breaking the law, visibly breaking the law. What came of it? Absolutely nothing. I mean, the order in which events occurred is even the funniest part of it. So first, we uncovered what was happening. Second, we heard from the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources that, well, there needs to be an investigation.
You are drinking the soup around the fufu.
I don't want to go into all of it.
Yes.
I suppose all I'll say is
the second topic will be?
Yes. So my second W will be the World Cup.
Okay.
For me, I think there are fewer stories. I mean, I can't think of any other story that got more Ghanaians talking than the World Cup. First of all, the qualification process was fraught, and then our performance at the event itself. Okay. The third W stands for what on earth happened in Parliament in 2022.
So everything in Parliament.
Take your pick. Whether it is the shenanigans through which they passed the E-Levy, whether it is the weirdness that is the Adwoa Safo debacle, or whether it is what Evans just alluded to, the Ken Ofori-Atta maneuver.
Okay.
However you look at it, Parliament has been a hotbed of weirdness throughout the year 2020.
Okay, so at least I have something we can start with. Let's bring Shamima in also. Let's take her top 3 as well. Shamima, can we take your top 3 in terms of issues that happened in 2022? Okay, it appears that we have a terrible connection to Shamima, but we'll work the lines and then the internet and then get a stable connection to her. Then we can have her join the discussion. So since you're all so interested in the Ken Ofori-Atta maneuvering, I think we should start with that.
Start with that? Okay, no problem.
Or what do you want to start with?
I mean, I think it's fair.
Yes.
And then, of course, the link obviously to the IMF decision.
Yes.
But let's start with
and then a debt exchange.
The Ken Ofori-Atta maneuvering, of course, flows from the decision, the U-turn he announced, right? So I would have...
We are not going to the IMF.
I would have...
We had John Kuma also in Parliament. We are not going.
But here's the thing. try and separate it clear, because I know we'll come back to that.
So before you do,
Sorry,
maybe we should hear Ken Ofori-Atta.
We are a proud nation. We have the resources. We have the capacity. Don't let anybody tell you. Like when Joshua, Caleb, and the 10 others went to spy on the promised land. And only 2 of them came to say that we can do it. And the 10 went around the community murmuring, you can't, da 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 da. We are not people of short sight.
So we all agree that the biggest issue for this year is the current economic situation, going to the IMF, our debt exchange, haircuts, where we are right now. So it dovetails into what happened in Parliament. The censure motion calls for his removal because he's the man in the center of all this. So he mentioned to us, we are not going to the IMF. We're a proud nation. Then there was a sudden U-turn. But let's get into it since we are talking about it.
I like that. That's the thing about year in review. So the sound that we just played of him saying we're a proud nation, and he's saying that because at that time he was convinced there's no way we're going to go to the IMF. He's obviously taking us to the IMF. Have we stopped being a proud nation?
That's the key question.
I mean, we need to ask that question, because then it's a fair question to ask, because he introduced that concept. He almost was saying to us that if we go back to the IMF, we stop being a proud nation. And this is the finance minister who was appointed by President, who introduced the concept of Ghana Beyond Aid. The whole idea of Ghana Beyond Aid was to further this point about us being a proud. We should stand on our own selves. We should grow what we eat, and etc. etc. And so they take us to the IMF and makes that massive U-turn. I argue that in the history of Ghanaian politics, I possibly would dare go back to just at the independence today, there hasn't been any U-turn as big as the U-turn to go to the IMF. And let's put this in context. Going to the IMF is what we do as a country. I mean, we've been there.
17 times.
You know, we just go to the IMF. It's a thing we do. Almost every 5 we go to the IMF. So it is no big deal to go to the IMF in Ghana, because it's a thing. IMF runs the economy. When they run this economy, we run it well. When they leave, we crash it.
Discipline.
It's just been that over the years. So it won't be a big deal to go to the IMF. Then come the Akufo-Addo administration with Ken Ofori-Atta as a finance minister. And this, you have to understand what I'm about to say, we have to go back to 2013, 2014, when the John Mahama administration decided to go to the IMF, or was about to go to the IMF. Everybody knew the signs were there. And God bless his soul, Professor Kwesi Botwe did a lecture at the Central University, which I covered for the station, where he first introduced the concept of policy credibility, that he believes that the time is here now to go to the IMF. Then also the current vice president also was very clear that we are just facing that decision. It was in that period when the IMF, going to the IMF was demonized, because it wasn't a big deal. Then John Mahama said, let's go to Senchi, because the crisis was here. Everybody was seeing what was happening. MPP says they're not going to participate. And the NDC was vilified quite extremely. And then they go to the IMF, and like, this is you failed, etc. etc. And if you listen to what happened even now when it went, people like Kennedy Japan, who was making the point. He made a point then that any government that goes to the IMF is a failed government. And he insisted that if we go to the IMF, our government had failed, right? They demonized the decision to go.
Let me put everything in context, and then we can hear John Mahama back then when this IMF issues came up.
Why not? That's fantastic.
Administration, when we decided to go to the IMF, they said it's only lazy governments that go to the IMF. And I mean, the words they said in that past have come to haunt them. So one of the reasons why they're afraid to go to the IMF is that what they said in the past will follow them.
Okay.
So that's the point I was making. So they demonized it to the point where it became such a big deal now. A place we've been to for 15 times before. That was the time before we were going. It was such a non-issue. And then they go to the IMF. And then they win elections. When they win election, remember what they said when they win election? When we win election, we'll get out of the IMF. They come, the reality was they couldn't immediately get out of IMF. So they extended for a year, and then they said they went to the IMF. When they came out of the IMF, there was a big celebration.
Yes.
Never again.
Was that the kinky party?
Never again are we going to go to, this is the final time we're going to the IMF, etc., etc. So that you understand why Ken was insisting, and the president was insisting, we won't go to the IMF. Even when we knew, approaching after COVID, that the economy was struggling and almost on its knees and going, because what they've done to the opposition party, vilified it, tore it to shreds for going to the IMF, which John Mahama just articulated. How dare us now then do the same thing John Mahama did? And then you hear Ken Japan say, if we do go to the IMF, then we have failed. That's it for him. So that's why going to the IMF was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. But for this government then to decide after a cabinet meeting that, listen, we have to go to the IMF. Goodness me. I remember the day when I saw the statement. And remember the way they announced it. It was a small statement.
Yes.
Like a few lines that was just dropped. Nobody was speaking to it. I remember that day calling everybody in government.
And nobody was willing.
Nobody. And I spoke to a very senior person in government that day. He said, Charlie, I beg this one. And this is a very senior person in government who says, I beg you, call the finance minister. Because nobody, I don't want to talk to it. And for days, such a big decision, it was only a press statement that was circulating about. Anybody remember that? Mm-hmm. It took Gabi Asaroche Dako on News File, anybody remember that? Yeah. To be the first, and he wasn't even in government, I mean an affiliate of the government. Or
very close to government.
A relative. To first go on national television to defend the decision, and then the floodgates opened, and then Kojo Nkrumah and others also started talking about. It tells you that I remember that day when I saw it, and I was making a call for Top Story News. Everybody I called said, "No way, I'm not going to talk." It's not because it was obvious. In fact, one senior minister, cabinet minister, told me that, "Listen, as for this, I will not put my name on it. If you want, call Ken Ofori-Atta." Right? I mean, that was the first day I realized that he was called Kuntum Kununku. Because I didn't know, because I know as Ken Ofori-Atta. Then so this minister then mentions that Kuntum. Like, who is Kuntum? Call Kuntum. So when I got off and I asked my colleague, I said, "Oh, that's part of his name." So everybody left it for him to deal with. And then I heard Gabi, and Gabi did a fantastic job. It was tough on News File with Samson. Yes. But he put up a brave face and defended it. And then everybody else started talking about it. The reason why it's a big story for me was that U-turn, for the government to eat such a giant, humble pie. If you know the president, this is something he would have rather die than do it, right? But he did it because it was obvious, that decision, you can't do anything about it. But here's the thing, they went too late. And because they went too late, the effects, exactly, the impact of this on the lives of every single Ghanaian, for me, the reason why this is the biggest story of
or was it not also because they were hoping that e-levy would come to the rescue? Because this particular statement that Ken Ofori-Atta made was at one of the town hall meetings when he was talking about the e-levy, trying to make people understand and buy into the e-levy, because they blame the minority for making the e-levy fail, for which reason they have to go back to the IMF. So it appears that government meant well at some point. Is it not the case?
I mean, meant well? I doubt, because you see...
Because we wanted to, bring in homegrown policies.
The mainstay of any proper functioning economy is your ability to predict and make forecasts. Right? That's what economists, that's what the technical guys at Bank of Ghana and that's what they do, is to forecast. That's why everything, the GDP is forecast. They tell you what GDP what you end the year with, so you can't tell me that a year ago you could not have because a lot of people foretold this. The Professor Buckwings of this world of last year were telling us that we are heading for a crash. And everybody kept on saying, look, even at January, people were saying, go to the IMF, right? Yeah. Everybody kept on saying go to... So when I say mean well, the only thing that kept them from making the decision was politics. Okay. It was politics, pure politics, and not policy. Because the policy was clear that go to the IMF. But the politics of having demonized your opponent for doing so, having demonized the IMF as an entity, that this is when you go to the IMF, you stop being a proud nation. So because of that, they decided not to go. And the result is what we are seeing. So that if you listen to their own analysis of the debt assessment analysis, it's going to take us at least 15 years to get out of this. If they had gone a year ago, it wouldn't have been this bad, right? So they've created a bigger mess because of politics and not because of the policy. And that for me is what the biggest lesson, both for this government and for the NDC, because both of them will interchange government every now and then, is if you allow politics to run a government, you find a crisis such as we have in the biggest crisis of our generation.
Yeah. We'll talk about the man, shortly. But the economy, maybe we'll add to it because it's not your top pick, but at least
I think listening to Evans, you realize, and Evans really laid out the order in which things happen so nicely, but you realize something. I like to sit back and think of what things mean. Okay, so when all this started unfolding, from November last year, when Ken Ofori-Atta read the 2022 budget and announced that there was going to be an e-levy and all the debate began, from that point, I started to ask myself, what do these things mean? Now, think about it this way. We went to the IMF because we couldn't pay our bills. That's it, in simple terms. We couldn't pay our bills. So, when did we realize that we can't pay our bills? When did the finance minister, the manager of our economy, and his deputy, when did they discover that we can't pay our bills? Because as recently as April or whenever it is that he said we're proud people, he said we're not going to the IMF. So back then, what is it that he thought we would use to pay our bills? I submit that there is no way, if even people sitting on Legon campus could tell you that we are going to default if we don't go to the IMF, then the finance minister knew. He knew. He knew from as far back as last year. Because guess what? The rating agencies have been downgrading us steadily since then. And while they were downgrading, we were borrowing. So, I mean, what did we expect?
And we're debunking some of the downgrades.
Absolutely. So the point I'm trying to make is that at the time, the finance minister was speaking into the microphone and telling Ghanaians that we are not going to the IMF. He knew that we had to go to the IMF. Okay. So you ask yourself, what made him say the opposite?
Was he deceiving us? Or was the politics that Evans was talking about?
What did he even hope to gain? Because it only made the situation worse. He wasn't saying it in response to a question. Nobody asked him a question. He was giving his own, delivering his own address, and he decided to say it. Why? So for me, who is interested in what things mean? I'm wondering what he thought he was doing, what he thought he would gain. Then his deputy went to Parliament, a house of record, and went to say the same thing, even more emphatically. He said that the day they go to the IMF is the day they what? They leave government.
Let's listen to John Kumah. Let's listen to John Kumah in Parliament talking about this IMF and not going there before the U-turn.
Okay. Resign because of going to the IMF when you said we're not going to the IMF? That's not a very good question. You know, it's almost like telling a father to resign from his children because he's changed his mind. You know, there are times that decisions have to be made for the survival of a country.
I'll bring you John Kumah in Parliament, but you know, this is Ken Ofori-Atta telling my colleague Kweku Asante at the NPP's Congress that we are, yes, that was after they decided that,
you know, there was one
he can't leave his children.
There was a press conference where a Reuters news agency guy asked him a question, why are you not going to the IMF? He told the guy into I remember that day, he told the guy that, why are you guys so fascinated and fixated about going to the IMF and pushing me to the IMF?
And as a result, after this children, you had a take. I know there was Ghana Connect on this, you know, all that thing came up on the Ghana Connect, I remember so well. But you had a take, it was one of your messages on the Morning Man on Ken Ofori-Atta describing us as his children, amongst others. I think I have that. Let's listen to it. Okay, I'll get that, Kojo. Okay. I really want us to hear that take, what you said about that. But you want to finish on this, then we can get into the others.
Let me just wrap up on this, because honestly, Evans really said it all. I'm just interested in what it means, okay? Because for me, there are two alternatives, two possibilities here. It's either the finance minister didn't have the competence to understand from the downgrades and the continued borrowing that we were leading to a point where we would have default and we would need someone to come and bail us out, or he knew, he's completely competent and understood that's what was happening, but he just felt a need to lie. So it's one or the other. He's either dishonest or incompetent. What a choice to have to make between who your finance minister is. But neither of those options was enough for him to lose his job, which is, I'm sure we'll discuss when we get to the shenanigans of Parliament.
Okay. Well, I think Shamima is now on phone. I'm dying to hear her picks as well. Shamima, we've been talking about the economy, but let's see what your top 3 picks are. Then I can take your thoughts also on the economy. Then we can get into your tops as well. Hello, Shamima.
Hello, Emefa.
Yes, I can hear you now, Shamima.
Okay. Good evening to everybody. Kojo, Evans, it's been a while.
Hi, Shamima.
And yes, the best of the seasons to all of you. So, Kojo and Evans, you've taken the wind out of my sails. So, Emefa, next time, start with me.
Yes,
okay?
I will. The next round, I'll start with you. But you have the biggest issues for 2022, maybe 3 of them. Let me line them up.
Of course, the economy and all the matters arising is definitely one of them. My second major issue, again, as the woman activist that I am, would be the issues with the gender ministry and what key lessons we can take from the entire debacle. And then my third might also be speaking about the media. This year, there was a lot of give and take between the media and state actors, and the whole issue of media freedoms, of impunity against journalists. I think that would be amiss if we ended the conversation without further looking at the issues that threaten media development and, by extension, our democracy. And then perhaps speak about the importance of media and information literacy for even the media itself and for the citizens and also for state actors. So those will be my 3 main issues. So jumping straight into the conversation about the economy and the issues around the finance minister, I think that when this matter of a cat with 9 lives came up, they might have been thinking about someone in the person of the finance minister. He really does seem to have 9 lives. He survived storms that many might not, be able to survive. But my take on the series of events and the U-turn leads me to a conclusion, also because of the persona of the finance minister, that this government or the managers of the government, especially with the economy, were very high on faith and low on pragmatic competency. Kojo alluded to the fact that the e-levy, as at first quarter of this year, had already shown indication that it wasn't the avenue to raise the needed domestic revenue. So the bills were piling up, the loan payments were coming up, the debtors were, knocking on our doors, and it would be very difficult to be convinced that the managers of the economy could not postulate that we're heading towards crisis. And if they were well aware that we're heading towards a crisis situation, and yet the finance minister will come to make definitive statements regarding the avenue or the option of an IMF bailout, which in our crisis situation will look like the most plausible, immediate, option for relief. If in the lead up to all of this, the finance minister can still make that statement, I mean, I'm befuddled. I'm left wondering, was the finance minister expecting a miracle Was he really in prayers and fasting and seeking the face of God to let manna drop from heaven wherever it will drop from, other than the IMF or other things? Because the local interventions had failed up to that point. So I'm so curious to know what conversations were happening in the corridors of power about options, about what needed to be done. And I can imagine that there may have been camps, one camp against any thought at all, any thought. And I'm sure majority leaders' statement, perish the thought, might have found expression in those conversations about going to the IMF and what have you. And one camp might have been cautioning that, please, guys, you know, it's about to get real and we need to really look pragmatically at taking a decision. So I'm really want to believe that as at the point that the finance minister was making the statement that we will not go to the IMF, we are a proud nation, and was still, you know, making those rhetoric statements, he was high on faith and nothing else. There was no signs to it. There couldn't possibly have been any signs to that claim other than faith. And yet we are told by the Christians, Emefa, you are a church elder, that faith without works is what? I can't remember the conclusion of that statement.
It's dead.
But what do you people say about faith without works?
It's dead.
It's dead.
Yes, dead is dead. Faith without works is dead.
I can't hear you properly.
Okay, well, it's dead. I'm sure everybody can hear that.
So it means that up to that point, we know that the works weren't there.
Yeah.
And so to be hoping that faith would, you know, deliver us from the crisis that was imminent, I think might have been a wet dream. And here we are today with my friends with the crisis that we are dealing with. And, you know, I wondered, if I imagined how the finance minister would have felt in the negotiation with the IMF team. Because this is just you making this statement 2 or so weeks before this announcement is made that you would have to come back to these same small boys to agree to your policy proposition to salvage the country.
Shamima, so that's when this whole issue about Ken Ofori-Atta's resignation came up.
Yeah.
And it takes us straight into that at this point, because you raised the issue about gender ministry, at least after Ken Ofori-Atta, one person that we've mentioned most in this country, I think is Adjo Asafo. We'll get to that shortly, because the absence of a gender minister is key for Shamima. We'll get into it. But how Ken Ofori-Atta survived this amidst all the calls for his resignation and removal, even that unprecedented move by the majority MPs? 85 of them, then 96 of them. We heard the majority leader saying it's a consensus amongst others. And still, nothing happened. I heard John Boydo on Sunday mention that the president would live up to the expectation, but we don't know if we will see a removal before the end of the year. Today is the 30th, tomorrow is 31st. We don't know. But we have a staff level agreement. At least the negotiations that you spoke to the Subing MP, amongst others, about, was that after the budget and then also a staff level agreement, or is it the entire IMF deal, we'll see the removal or not of Ken Ofori-Atta. But really, you mentioned it. How did he survive this? What really is it about Ken Ofori-Atta that he's still the finance minister?
Ken Ofori-Atta only survived this because the president didn't want him to go.
Okay.
This is, yes, it's Ken, but this is more President Akufo-Addo than anything else. And in this country right now, really, if you're talking about political astuteness, political maneuvering, there's nobody, and I get without apologies in this country, that knows political shenanigans, ability to wheel and deal than the current president. Nobody knows it better. His generation, a lot of them are gone now. You still have maybe former President Kufuor still around. In terms of his ability to maneuver, he knows it and does it best. And when he was convinced that there's no way Ken should go, he did not only behind the scenes, definitely anybody who was acted on his behalf, anybody who acted to try and keep Ken there only did so on the president's behalf, even if he didn't ask them to. And so when he went on the radio station, I think in Kumasi, and said that Ken's performance has been excellent and that he had no basis to remove him, of course, when they criticized him for that, and he angered. In fact, that is... it wasn't just Ken Ofori-Atta. Other ministers as well, including the Agric Minister in all, says they performed excellently.
Yeah.
So the calls for reshuffle...
He
I mean, I get it. I mean, but because you're talking about Ken, I'm isolating that. I mean, that angered a lot of the people within this party. But he said that and acted to get him there, for him to stay. Ken is not a politician. Ken is an investment banker. He's excelled at doing this. He's set up data bank. He knows nothing about the way politics works. So the fact that he survived this, he survived a political tsunami, an unprecedented one, of course, because for the very first time in our history, we had members of the governing party in parliament holding a press conference to say we want our finance minister removed. That is unprecedented. It's never happened before, right? And yet he survived that. He survived that. And they did not only say go, they actually said that if you don't move him, we will boycott your business.
Watch the press conference.
Of great concern to the greater majority of members of our caucus and our constituents. We have made our grave concern to the President through the parliamentary leadership and the leadership of the party without any positive response. We are by this medium communicating our strong desire that the President change the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State in the Finance Ministry without further delay in order to restore hope into the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy. We want to serve notice, and notice is hereby served, that until such persons as aforementioned are made to resign or removed from office, we, members of the majority caucus here in Parliament, will not participate in any business of government by or for the President, by any other minister.
That press conference, radio audience, pardon me for saying watch, at least. You also heard what was said. At least they were calling for Charles Edubwahing and then Ken Ofori-Atta. Then we all know what happened to Charles Edubwahing.
Exactly. Charles Edubwahing left because of
he was sacked.
Expose that saw him allegedly taken. That is a subject of some investigations. But you listen to Andy Appiah-Kubi, and the day he did this, it was as if an explosion just happened. Like, wow, I couldn't believe that this was happening in this country where people just support blindly. This loyalty, party loyalty is more important than the national cohesion and the national interest. But for the very first time we saw this, and I thought there's no way Ken survives this. But then what I didn't remember is that Ken is not there because he's there. He's there because the president put him in there. And it all comes down to what the president wants out of this. And clearly when he called them into a meeting, we knew what he wanted. He wanted the man to stay. And he told them, keep him there. Well, at least we haven't heard from the president, but everything we've heard is from the MPs themselves, including the majority leader. So I won't doubt them. That leave him there until budget is over, until preparation, and until the deal with the IMF is done, and then he will let it go. But then I had an interview with Seche Mensah, and I asked him, so did the president categorically commit to remove him after these three milestones have been met? One, budget, which you know the budget is out of the way now. Appropriation is out of the way now. The IMF deal
was it the staff level or the entire deal?
Oh, the IMF deal. I mean, that's my understanding of it, and that's Seche Mensah's understanding of it too. Which is like we are 30-45% there left with a staff level agreement. I asked him, did he categorically say I will let him go when these three milestones are met? And he says categorically no. The president didn't categorically say that he will let him go once all this is met. And I'm like, again, this is the president maneuvering expertly, as I know he will. And again, we saw that in just last 2 weeks, We've seen Eugene
Wachinchi, yes,
come back to make pronouncement that he should go. But Ken Ofori-Atta must take a lot of credit, because at the end of the day, he was the one who was taking all the heat. He had to face the MPs, in Parliament. And he must.
But for what?
He had to stay. I mean, the point is, you can hate or like Ken Ofori-Atta, but one thing that you must credit him for is his ability to stay the course in the face of all the opposition. All the odds were against him. His own people in his ranks against him. He stayed the course. He went to Parliament, the Censure Committee, and he came out looking better than going in, right? I mean, so that was, he went to the vote of censure, the vote on the floor. Yeah. He came out even much better from the debate that happened on the floor. The Attorney General, for the very first time, was on the floor of Parliament. Never happened, at least
you haven't seen any censure.
Went on the floor to argue. This is the Attorney General of this great republic, to argue on his behalf. Listen, this is why I'm saying, when the president says, this is what I want, he moves everybody to act. When immediately after the budget was read, the MPs deserted the House. For days, we did stories on Newsline, how the House was deserted. The MPs were, even ministers, looking to come and debate the budget. They were in Qatar. In fact, the Finance Committee leadership, when they asked them to come and debate, nobody was even there to second. That's the budget,
and it turns out the Apia could be the man that led
the point I'm going to make is this. The budget that was supposed to, this is the biggest consequential budget of our lives, right? Because of the crisis we're in. It's supposed to take us out of the crisis. They were not there to debate it. They abandoned it. But when it came to Ken Ofori-Atta's survival on that day of debate for the vote of censure, all the ministers were marshaled there to defend him, including the two famous communications minister and energy minister who were seen chilling in Qatar when the debate on the Bible. They were in the House and they took a picture to show that, yeah, we're here. When the president says, this is what is important to me, and the signals by their presence, right? It tells you a lot about how the system works. And the fact that he not only maneuvered the end, of course, that's what the NDC MPs, they knew this was a fight and losing battle anyway. But they gallantly lost, right? But Ken should be credited for a lot. I mean, when you think back now, you're wondering, I mean, so why did they do all that to the man? And because he's still standing, you're wondering, should they still pursue? And I really doubt going into 2023, and that's part of the thing we're doing review, going into 2023, whether indeed he will leave.
That's the question I was going to put to
I believe this is what I predict will happen. I believe Ken leaves if he
wants to leave, or the president wants him to leave.
No, and the president would never want him to go.
Are you saying in all this, at least you have your sources, in all this, there was no point that Ken himself wanted to leave and the president says to stay?
I don't know that.
Okay.
But I'm just making a prediction going into 2023 that Ken only leaves if he wants to. I am confident the president himself will not want to remove Ken, the president himself.
Really?
I think this comes down to what Ken chooses to do. It is not up to the MPP MPs. As for the NDC MPs, they're out of the equation. They've lost their vote. It's done. The MPP MPs, first of all, watch whether they'll be still disunited in 2023 after the IMF deal is struck. It comes down to what Ken wants to do, and we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong, but that's what I believe will happen.
Did you agree? Ken only leaves when he wants
to. If Evans's theory is right, that Ken will only leave when he wants to leave, then Ken will never leave. Because if this didn't make him want to leave, nothing will. I mean, honestly, what is worse than this? First, you tell everybody that some e-levy thing is going to save our economy, and you calculate that it will bring in some 4-point-something billion. It doesn't even make 10% of your estimated target. So as a finance minister, you got your maths wrong. That didn't make you resign. Then, when we were on the verge of going to the IMF, you came to tell us that we won't go. And then in the end, we went. That didn't make you resign. The entirety of Parliament, and by the way, when the entirety of Parliament wants something, the theory is that the entirety of the nation wants it because those are our representatives.
Yes.
So the whole nation wanted you to quit. You didn't quit. You didn't resign. You came to defend. You came to explain to
why you should stay.
Parliament why you should stay in office, why you are innocent. Honestly, what will make him want to resign? I don't think anything will ever make him.
You could also look at it this way: I want to leave on my own terms, not because
you're asking me to leave.
Look,
okay.
That's another way of looking at it.
At this rate, if the NPP loses the next election and the NDC becomes the next government and they hire Ken Ofori-Atta to stay on, he probably will. But anyway, let me get back to this whole thing about the maneuverings of Parliament and Ken Ofori-Atta. I think I agree maybe about 3/4 of the way with Evans's analysis of how this thing unfolded. I agree with the fact that the president is the driving force behind his survival, not necessarily Ken himself. But maybe the last quarter of the argument where I may take a small departure is this. I think, and look, I love movies, so I'm going to try and use a movie to explain my theory here. Not a particular movie, but the movie industry, if you like. Okay. In movies, there's something called the MacGuffin. MacGuffin, M-A-C-G-U-F-F-I-N, MacGuffin. It's a device that is used to move the story along, even though the story is not about that device.
Okay.
So, for example, if you watch the Titanic, the title of the movie is Titanic. It's set on a big ship, but the movie is not about the ship. The movie is about two lovers. So that story could have happened anywhere. The Titanic, the World Trade Center, anywhere. So the Titanic is just a device to move the story along. Or maybe you watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and they are all running around looking for the Holy Grail. It's a cup. The story, is every character is pursuing this cup. But the movie is about the characters, not the cup. So I think Ken Ofori-Atta is the MacGuffin in this storyline. So, like Evan says, he has no constituency.
What will be the title of this movie? I'm interested. maybe Evans will help with that. Parts 1 and 2. Okay.
All right. So, in this movie, Ken is the MacGuffin. He's the plot device that moves the story along. The story is not about him. Okay. He's just what everybody is arguing about, but it's not about him. The story is about the main characters here. And if we are to extend the movie analogy, then the killer, the antagonist in this scenario is the president. He's the mastermind. This is why I agree with Evans. He's the one who declared that I want this man to stay. But other people made it happen.
Yeah.
Other people played the chess that enabled Ken to stay. Those other people, perhaps in our movie analogy, they will be the jack. Do you know the jack? That's the big, strong guy who stands next to the bad guy. The bad guy sends him off to do all the horrible things.
So you're giving us the killer. Who is the blue man in this one?
The blue man might have to be those who wanted Ken out. The people of Ghana. Right?
This time the blue man has lost.
Yes. So in this movie,
there are movies like that.
There are movies like that. Yes.
The killer one
in this one. Because look, as soon as the president declared his desire, and that is the strength that our president has. Maybe he's a veteran politician like Evans is saying, but I think his bigger strength is the fact that he has got chess players around him. And also, he can be petulant. He can decide, I want this, and I don't care how you get it. Get it for me. And he is able to motivate people to achieve goals that he envisions by whatever means necessary. He did it with free SHS.
Yeah.
He said,
when people told him he could, even Ken had his doubts.
Indeed, he said, no, make it happen. I don't care how you do it. And somehow the force of that will made it happen. The same thing happened with Ken. He wanted Ken to stay, as Evan says, but other people played the chess game. And look, me, I'm cynical, but I genuinely believe that all the parts in Parliament, they all worked together to keep Ken in office. From Apia Kubi to Oseche Mensah-Bonsu to the minority to the Speaker of Parliament. Everyone did something that guaranteed Ken Ofori-Atta stay.
Really?
Yeah. Take Apia Kubi and his cohort of 90-something odd MPs who came to announce to us that the people of Ghana have told them that they want Ken Ofori-Atta out. So they are calling on the president to sack him. Then the president called them and said, I won't sack him. Then they came back and told us that The president says we should wait. So now they are not working for the people of Ghana anymore.
They're working for the president.
They are working for the president. The person who they had openly opposed.
In the interest of the economy at the time. The reason they gave.
Come on. Look, first of all, let us be analytical. The person who we are insisting we wanted to lead us into the IMF negotiations, otherwise it will fail, is the one who said we won't go to IMF. In what world was that the most credible person to lead us into the negotiations?
Okay. Well, but the question that many are asking also is that, is Ken Ofori-Atta the best finance minister we've had in this country? Such that...
Who's even asking?
Because the fact that people are asking for the removal, and in all this, you've been talking about the maneuverings, such that...
This is a very diabolical question. I think the question is sarcastic.
I think Ken Ofori-Atta is the most favored.
Most favored
finance minister.
Maybe Shamima will have an answer.
What would attach a president to the coattails of somebody who said the opposite of what you wanted? He said we will not go to the IMF when he knew we had to go. But you insist that this is the only person you want in that office. I don't think there has ever been a more favored finance minister than Ken Ofori-Atta.
If it wasn't Ken Ofori-Atta, do you think, at least you have monitored this, you've been on the political scene, anybody else but Ken Ofori-Atta, would the president do same?
No.
Is it because they are relatives? What exactly is the connection between the two?
You have to understand, you have to go back to the president's attempts to be president.
Okay.
Since before 2000.
The 3 times try?
Exactly. All the times he's tried. Ken, as a family member, has been one of the galvanizing forces.
Yes.
Exactly. Bringing in the resources. Ken did not only maneuver and pull the resources together. At one point, he brought up this fantastic idea of nurturing your constituency, etc. And he was on the street, distributing leaflets
with the wife,
encouraging people to donate. Exactly, donate money to his the president was his cousin, to his cousin's cause to become president.
Uncle, cousin.
Yeah, exactly.
Not sure.
Yeah, I mean. And he's done that consistently. The president's defeat in 2008 didn't stop him from doing it again in 2012. So if you understand that history, the loyalty, the president is a man who believes in loyalty to a fault.
Okay.
For him, it is everything. Politics is about loyalty first, loyalty second, and loyalty third. Nothing more than loyalty. And he said as much a couple of days back. When he swore in the new gender minister, he told the deputies that if you are disloyal, and it wasn't competence, it was emphasizing, if you are disloyal, I won't allow you to benefit off your disloyalty. I will sack you, have to be loyal. For him, loyalty, and Ken has been loyal to him to a fault. And stood by him in spite of his failings to be president. Now he is president. He appoints him. You want him to remove him. That's what I'm saying. That the president himself will never remove Ken. So that meeting that he went and MPs came, that's what informed my question of JoyNews Abungsu. Did the president categorically say so? Because the president that I think I know, that I've read about, will never, and he's astute, he would have given you an impression. And they came out thinking that that's what he meant, but this guy is, as I said, don't kid when the president is around, right? And so there's no way the president sacks him.
But should the loyalty not be to the people that the president is serving, people that put him there? Should the loyalty be to...
Well, that's not what the president communicates. The president communicates that you must be loyal to him. And you heard him, was it yesterday or the day before?
But he's not loyal to us.
Yeah, he said it.
He even went further. He said, look, if you are disloyal to me, then I interpret it as you are being disloyal to the government and thereby the state.
No, in fact, he said the other way. So if you are disloyal to the minister, then that's disloyalty to me. And
then thereby to the government and the state.
Okay.
Think about that. Think about the state of mind.
That is how the president, that is the president. That's the president we have.
Right?
Okay. So for him, loyalty is everything.
He knows he's not going to be president forever. But he considers any disloyalty to him to be disloyalty to the state.
Look at the people he sacked since he became president.
Good.
Let's look at the first energy minister. It was believed, the belief then was that that minister was disloyal, was somehow disloyal, right? We still haven't confirmed the reasons, but there's a lot of speculation around why. Somebody misled the president, remember, right? So the interpretation of the president was, you were disloyal to me. So once you break that loyalty chain, I will sack you. In fact, in the deputy minister's case, it was clear. Now, once you are disloyal to your minister, I will sack you. It was clear.
Okay.
I won't sack you if you are incompetent.
No.
I'll sack you if you're
I will
disloyal.
sack you if you are disloyal to the minister and by extension to me. So the people he sacked, the one thread runs through from the first energy minister he said. Who else has he sacked?
We sacked Charles Dubois recently.
Charles Dubois. No, but Charles Dubois' case, his hands was tied, right? I mean, his hands was tied. I mean, he had no choice in the matter. The evidence was clear. I mean, that for him is clear. So that's why I was so confident to say, 2023, the MPP MPs who think that they are looking forward to a certain Ken Ofori-Atta.
Then they've been also disloyal, haven't they?
Say it again?
Then they've been disloyal to these MPs that called for
the president.
Yes.
Why do you think that last time when my colleague Kweku spoke to the MP, the last MP to speak on this 2 weeks ago?
The Subing MP.
No, the Subing MP.
Okay.
The other one who was. I did that story on top, so I've forgotten his name all of a sudden.
Oh, the one who, Subin's
Not the
MP.
Subin MP.
Are you sure?
The Subin MP is Andy Apiakubi.
No, that's not. That's not. No, that's Eugene as Eugene entry.
That's the one. Eugene is the one. He's too big. Good, fantastic. Pardon me. The last time we spoke to him, he said that people are coming after his seat.
Oh.
Yeah, that's 2-3 weeks ago. And it's that he's not afraid of President Akufo-Addo. He said it clearly. I remember doing that story. He said, I'm not, who is President Akufo-Addo? I was appointed, I was elected like he was elected. That he's not afraid of him. He mentioned his name.
Is he sure?
Oh, yeah. Well, he said it.
But he said it publicly.
Okay.
But my point I'm making to you is, you said they've been disloyal to Akufo-Addo. That is why Eugene is saying they are coming for his seat.
Okay, so they will all suffer one by one.
Well, he said it. I didn't say it. I'm taking his word for it. And he said, I'm not afraid.
Okay.
Right? In fact, the word he used that, who is President Akufo-Addo? That he got elected the same way he was elected. And that it was the people of his constituency who elected him. And so the president cannot do anything to him. I'm like, okay, let's wait and see.
You see, this economy and issues about Ken Ofori-Atta alone can take the whole 2 hours. But let me bring in Shamima briefly on this. Then we can get into the most talked about lady also this year, Sarah Adjo-Asafo. Shamima, so let's wrap up on Ken Ofori-Atta. I was asking questions about whether he is the finest finance minister we've seen in this country, such that it's so difficult to let him go. What say you, Shamima?
Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, and in the eyes of President Akufo-Addo, there couldn't have been any more beautiful person than the finance minister. In fact, the President Akufo-Addo is your typical right.
Oh goodness.
Do I have Shamima? Oh no. Well,
Emefa.
Yes, we can hear you, Shamima. We lost you briefly.
I'm saying that President Akufo-Addo is your typical ride or die. And we all need an Akufo-Addo in our life. Indeed, he does reward loyalty. But there's another thing I think. I think that Ken is more than an individual representing himself. I think that Ken Ofori-Atta is representing the legacy of the firm. The firm here being the family. And all along, I'm not sure Ken, despite his quiet persona, his slow but sure approach, he was never going to leave without a fight, because this is not about just him. This is about protecting a certain legacy for the family. And he was not going to go out at the point where the kitchen was so hot and there was chaos around him. And I'm sure he was guided by the first few words of Rudyard Kipling's song, poem, If, when he says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. Only in this case, Ken didn't make allowance for anybody's doubting of him. I'm sure he's been inspired by this poem to try to prove himself. And that's where we are now. Because of the 90 or so MPs from his side who were calling for his head, and the meeting that was held with President Akufo-Addo, and the agreement that allow Ken to manage and ferry us through this chaotic phase, allow him to pass a budget, allow him to secure an IMF bailout. Let it not be said that in the history of this nation, when a member of the firm came to power again, he was virtually ousted out by members of his own party. That is not a history they were going to allow to be written. They were definitely not going to allow this kind of history to be written about the firm. Okay. And so now, if you go back after an IMF deal has come up, the question, a fair question would be, so why now do you want him out? You said he brought about a crisis. He has managed to ferry us out of this crisis. We have a budget which is workable. We have an IMF bailout. We have a debt restructuring program which is already on the way. The indications the market has responded positively to the indication. There's a seeming stability returning. The cedi depreciation is being halted, and we're seeing some gains. The question to them is, so why now do you still want him to go? That would be a fair question to ask. So I don't know, unless Ken himself wants to walk out after he has performed what he believes to be creditable, there's no way nobody will be able to push him out. Definitely not President Akufo-Addo. That's not going to happen, in my opinion, unless after all is said and done, if indeed the hope and wish of Ken to stabilize this economy and restore stability and bring us back to winning ways, if a semblance of that is achieved, then he says, okay, now I can live with this history. That yes, under my watch, we came this low, but again, under my watch, we rose back to this high. And so I am happy to walk with my head held up than walk with my tail between my legs.
Okay.
Well, I think that is the approach that Ken Ofori-Atta and perhaps with the support of President Akufo-Addo are going to be leading with in the coming weeks and days. So only time will tell.
Okay. Well, so I think Ken did not lie when he told my colleague Kweku Asante that as a father, he cannot leave his children. So he, at least for 2022, Ken did not leave us as his children. This is the year in review. We're taking a look at the year 2022. There's been descriptions of how this year has been. And in Kojo's words, what do you say the year has been?
Weird.
Weird. Okay. Well, so we are live on Joy 99.7 FM. We are on the JoyNews channel. We're on all our social media platforms. There are questions that we'll put out there, and we'll get your inputs as well. Your news personality of the year, soundbite of the year. I've heard lots of people talk about it already, but I won't give it out just yet. We'll talk about it. I know they have their favorite soundbite. They played a lot this year, so we'll get into it at the tail end of the show as well. But one person, at least we talked about a man, Ken Ofori-Atta. There's another lady also that we've talked about. I don't know the number of times, Evans, you've done top story on the gender minister, former gender minister of this country, Sarah Adwoa-Safo, MP for Dom Kwabenya, the most talked about lady this year. She broke her silence on the polls with Blessed Suga. At least she was also sacked at some point by the president. You're talking about people who were sacked by President Akufo-Addo, though reluctantly.
When you come back, I'll tell you why he stayed that, why she stayed that long.
Okay, well, we're here. Is it because President Akufo-Addo wanted her to stay? Okay, but first, let's listen to that interview before we get into the discussion on Sarah Adwoa-Safo.
Definitely, I will return. As you know, my son has been unwell, and that is why I had to come here to the United States to, be the mother and the best mother that I could be. And I'm still here making sure that all that is settled with my son and all the authorities and the school, and it's still ongoing. I've been a deputy leader of Ghana's parliament, and I know the rules, and I know that the Privileges Committee wants me to be in parliament, but as we speak, I don't know that I've been invited. I have to be served, and I'm not aware that any such thing has been given to me. I'm just hearing it from you. As you can see, I'm here in the United States, and I don't know that I was supposed to. I mean, if the speaker says that you've been referred, the committee has to sit and have its own modalities of how we're going to appear, when and how, dates, what information they're requiring, and I don't think I have all that information as we speak right now.
And this was in May, in that interview with my colleague Blessed Sugar on the polls, and returned to Parliament. She did, and but unfortunately, a number of bills were affected because of the absence of a gender minister, the Affirmative Action Bill, for instance. And I'm sure Shamima is very interested in that. So, Shamima, it was one of your top picks. So I'll start with you on this because a lot of gender activists were concerned about the absence of a gender minister and deputies because of Sarah Josafo's absence, not to talk of Dom Kwabinya constituents and the absence of their MP. I know that the politics of it all, we'll talk about it when we get to Evans. But Shamima, take us away on Sarah Josafo.
Emefa, so, I mean, the Josafo case is very similar to the Ken case. And it's a double-edged sword. You look at some of the negatives with regard to the effect her absence had on the very sensitive ministry like the Gender and Social Welfare Ministry, which definitely required a lot of attention. We'll look at that. But we'll also look at the risk that women and the challenges that women in leadership and in politics are faced with, and how sometimes women and men are treated differently when, you know, in crisis situations, okay? Because if you compare Eken and Adjasaf, they virtually have been through the same kind of, you know, rigor in terms of the demands and the criticism. Today, Ken is still a man standing. Adjasaf is a woman gone back to care for her kids. So, two things. Let me deal with the issue of challenges that women in leadership are faced with, because we're told by Adjasaf that it was circumstances beyond her control that took her out of the jurisdiction of this country, and that the president was aware about her personal circumstances, which led her to go out. Again, it brings about the issue of choices. When we say that there is disparity in gender relations and the expectations on women and men are different, and that the roles of women and men are different. Women play reproductive roles, women play productive roles, women play social roles, and society expects of you to play all of these roles almost perfectly. And if society does not recognize that sometimes in your quest to play a particular important role, like reproduction, which role is what is ensuring there is labor supply in the market? This reproductive role of women is non-negotiable. Without it, economies will come to a halt because there will be no labor supply. If all women decided to stop giving birth, societies will become extinct. So this is an important role that policy and government must protect. And so if there was any reason that, you know, required of her to be away, it would have been a justifiable reason to give her a leave of absence.
Okay.
Now, you can ask that, well, but 1 year was such a long time. In advanced countries, women can go on maternity leave for 1 whole year and still be paid. You would say that we are not in a position
but that's
to do
that's
that
not our
because
case. That's not our case here, Shamima.
Pardon?
I'm saying that's not our case here.
But that's the point I'm trying to make, that yes, you may say that we are not in the position to do that. And it is not up to Sarah Adjo-Asafo, who are taking a leave of absence, to find a replacement. And I think that the president did act by giving the ministry to a caretaker minister to hold the fort. I mean, there are other issues that came up to mar the entire situation, which involved her participation in parliamentary activities, and the issues raised about her disrespect to the parliamentary committee that was looking into the matter of her absenteeism from parliament. So there again, that's where the criticism comes. So yes, in as much as Adjo-Asafo may have had legitimate reasons for her absence, she ought as a lawmaker to have ensured that she did the right thing legally by providing the necessary information to Parliament and receiving the necessary approval for her absence. And yes, for her refusing to attend upon the committee is a matter that we can raise up with her and require that women who also venture into public office must know that yes, the terrain is tough, and it's exactly because of the toughness and the loneliness of that position that you must always seek at all times to dot your I's and cross your T's, so you don't give opportunity for people to discredit the gains that you have made. She is one of the youngest politicians who have risen through the ranks and held very important positions in Parliament. That kind of institutional knowledge must count for something. Fighting and maintaining a constituency for 3 terms, it is no mean achievement that ought not to be, rewarded or recognized.
Okay,
but as
Shamima, not to cutting at this point, Shamima, but I need to
that
come.
Were also not right. Pardon?
I need to come to the studio as well. At this point, I need to manage the time a bit more because it looks like we are going.
No problem.
Yes, and we need to bring in our audience as well. I know the polls are going on social media, but in all this, we know that there was an MP that came up and the Deputy Trades Minister, Michael Ochiberfi, that came up to say that it appears it was in protest of the position that Sarah Adjo-Asafo was asking for that they did not get, amongst others. In all this, there are concerns about whether Sarah Adjo-Asafo actually did hurt the NPP in the process. And you promised to tell us why Sarah Adjo-Asafo was
she hurt the NPP in the process. Remember that the budget was rejected last year because she wasn't there. They needed her to in the House to get the e-levy passed. But the e-levy's delay was significantly also down to her absence because they needed to have the number, had to be in the House, to the point where at one point there was a controversy whether it was a dummy that was in the House or a look-alike that was in the House. So there was a big her absence caused the government, the entire economy, quite a lot, because if you believe Ken Ofori-Atta, that the delay in passing the e-levy was one of the key reasons why we've been downgraded and the CD depreciated. And of course, Adjo-Asafo will take a fair share of that blame. The reason why she kept her job for that long, in spite of the fact that she's been away and nobody could reach her for a year, was because of loyalty. The president will, that's why I'm saying that I know when the president sacks Ken Ofori-Atta, the president will not sack it, even though the woman was gone without permission. The president, nobody could reach her. The famous story is told of how the chief of staff went to her house to look
they were
for
not
her,
allowed in.
and she wasn't allowed to see her. We heard from the father of her babies as well, also saying the same thing, tried to reach her. And in spite of that, the president kept her in the job for a long time, until very recently when he decided to let her go because of loyalty. And for me, it's the president is loyal to people to a fault. But Sarah Adjo-Asafo is gone as a
gender minister, but still the MP.
The MPP MPs, the caucus, they are still determined to get her out. The committee's report was laid. The speaker says it has to come back for a debate. We're waiting for that. Hopefully the next, when Parliament resumes, possibly that will come.
Okay. Well, Kojo?
So we possibly will have a by-election next year.
Yeah, we might.
So you asked the question, did her actions hurt, the government, the NPP? I think her actions hurt the NPP, her actions hurt Parliament, her actions hurt women and children in this country. Her actions even hurt feminism, if you ask me. Because Shamima makes some very important points. These kinds of discussions bring up the ugly debate around feminism. And I think it's unfair. Because, look, it's not because she's a mother that she faced these problems. It's because she didn't do the right thing. If a man abandons his job because his child is sick, I have a child. If I suddenly stop turning up for work, and I don't tell anybody why, I don't ask permission, I don't make sure that I'm covered, I don't do what I'm supposed to do, and I basically sacrifice my entire audience of 6 million people for my child. There is a cost. It's a decision I've made. Yes, I'm a father, I love my child, I've made that decision, but there is a cost. And I will bear that cost, whether I'm a man or a woman. You see, so I don't think it's a gender issue. And you see, we do that sometimes in politics. So if a woman is rude, a woman leader is rude, and we say, this woman is rude, we say, if it was a man, you wouldn't say that. But we call men rude as well. If Kennedy Japan says something and people don't agree with him, they call him rude. If you are rude, you are rude. It's not a gender thing. You see, but sometimes it just suddenly rears its head up in the debate, and that doesn't help feminism, because there are real battles that feminism needs to focus on, not these. She didn't do the right thing. She did not seek permission. If that happens to anybody, they will face the same consequences. And the sad thing about it is that, in her case, she genuinely doesn't think she was wrong. She genuinely doesn't think that there's any obligation on her as an appointee of the president, as an elected representative of the people, to explain to them that I can't be available to work for you because I have this personal emergency, which, by the way, is a real reason to be away from work. If my child was sick, I'd be away from work. So it was right for her to be away. But there is something you do. And if it gets to the point where you realize that actually the needs of my child will prevent me from serving in this position, you quit. That's the honorable thing. You quit because you can't do the job. You can't, and it's not your fault. Your child is sick. You have to focus and take care of your child.
Well, thankfully, we have a new gender minister and deputies as well. So we'll see how the gender ministry will function going forward. But at least I've satisfied all of you. At least you mentioned IMF. Yeah. We've talked about it together with Ken Oforiatta. Shamima talked about the gender ministry, also the economy. We've touched on that. Your first W, which is the wound to me and Galamsey, she takes me straight into Stop Galamsey fight. We'll talk about it. But I know there's a poll also on social media that's on Twitter. Okay, so let's take a look at it. So who is the most talked about personality of the year? And that's the question on our Twitter page, on JoyNews on TV. And look at the results. Okay, so Ken Oforiatta has 49.4%. Sarah Adjo has 8%, and Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has 42.6%. In fact, everybody agrees, at least the two cousins are in contention for the most talked about personality of the year. So Ken Oforiatta in pole position, 49.4%.
A man with no constituency beats the president.
Beats the president, yes, in a poll. And Akufo-Addo, 42.6%. So people are still voting, and we'll take a look at it again before we end the show. But let's talk about our Galamsey fight, at least. I know that from the documentary that was put together by my colleague Erastus Asare-Donko, much talked about. We started this Galamsey fight, No to Galamsey, from the morning show to the PM Express, everywhere. But let's take a look at the president, talk about Aisha Wang. Also ties in nicely to Aisha Wang's rearrest and going to court and all the issues that have come up on that. So, Wound to me Galamsey, that was your first. Kojo, I'll come to you on it, but let's take a look at this.
When you have a situation like this woman who was, I'm not still sure whether she was in fact deported or whether she fled the country the first time and has now come back, but whatever. There still seems to be some uncertainty about it. But whichever way it is, she's become the sort of nickname for all that the Galamsey represents. And unfortunately, also for the involvement of Chinese nationals in Ghana in this particular illicit trade.
Well, so that's President Akufo-Addo in the Ashanti region, one of the interviews talking about how Aisha Wang, nobody knows how she left the country the first time, the rearrest amongst that. This was very topical as well. And my colleague Erastus Asare-Donkor thankfully joins us via Zoom as well to set the ball rolling on the issues about Galamsey leading to that documentary, then Aisha Wang's arrest, then our Galamsey fight amongst others. Then we'll talk about Wontumi. I'm sure Kojo is dying to talk about that as well. But Erastus, what a year it's been. I think one of the major projects for you this year has been this Galamsey documentary, amongst others. Tell us a bit about it and all the reactions and all the work that you did when it comes to the issue about Galamsey. You'd have to unmute, Erastus.
Yeah, so if it were to be a blockbuster movie, I would say it has topped the charts. And I just wanted to borrow Kojo's analysis using the movie. It has received a lot of commendation from both Ghanaians in Ghana, Ghanaians outside, in fact, foreigners as well, who did not know the extent to which illegal mining is raping our environment. And so I've had a number of calls from organizations, from universities who have asked me to deliver lectures on, illegal mining and how it affects our environment and all that. So yes, it has gotten a wider coverage, more than all the works I have done. But I was expecting that this evidence, pure evidence on the ground, will yield some level of, proactiveness on the side of government if really they were bent on fighting illegal mining. This was evidence given to you, drone footage, ground footage, everything indicating violations of our own laws with impunity. And yet, you find out that the feet dragging of government, and even the fact that certain leaders do not even want to comment about the documentary itself. You remember the Minister for Lands came to Kumasi with the president. They came to show their own video of what they make of illegal mining, and did not even mention, at that time when the documentary was making waves, did not even mention that, okay, multimedia did some works, we've seen it, we're going to take action or something. Not even a mention of it. And in all their discussions, they try very much not to even talk about it. And it's mind-boggling, it's surprising that this is a government that seeks to spend millions of Ghana cedis putting soldiers out there in the forest trying to fight illegal mining. And then a journalist goes back to assess the work. So to me, this is great feedback from the person who sent the people into the forest to fight illegal mining. This is great feedback that, okay, I've gone to find out what they've been doing, the effect on the environment, the impact. This is it. What are you going to do with it? And yet nothing has been done about it.
Well, but I'm sure that after we started this campaign, or after we aired the documentary, the two-part documentary that we aired, I know you have your people still on the ground checking the situation. Erastus, please tell me something has really changed.
Well, some things have changed in certain sectors. With others, it is still as it is. When we went to the Deputy Lands Minister's hometown, that is Dumping, and we showed you what was happening in there. Soon after the documentary aired, in fact, those in the Patahon forest and the Treboom forest packed their equipment and left. Soon they got to other parts of Dumping to start with the Chinese to mine illegally in those areas, polluting the Bonsa River again. If you heard, somebody was shot by Chinese miners in that area close to the Bonsa River, where the Chinese had regrouped and were mining with impunity and polluting the river from that end. It came from, that shooting incident came from that regrouping that I'm talking about. When you go to Samra Boy, where we showed you drone footage of how the tunnel was being polluted, yes, soon as we aired, a number of the people who were mining in the river gathered their equipment and left in a hurry from the forest. So yes, that is good news. With the tunnel in the forest, there was feed dragging in the initial stages. The people did not want to leave. They were still mining in there until we put the heat back on them. And then they gathered their equipment, left. Akonta mining signs that were put over there, the barriers and other things were removed.
Okay.
Traces of him mining in the tunnel in the forest were erased immediately. And so since then, nothing has been happening there. The people have been talking about reclamation to prevent anybody from even thinking about going back to that area to mine. So I must say that something has happened on the ground. With regards to prosecution, well, Martin Pebu, lawyer, filed a complaint to the police. He filed a petition to them. They invited me to assist them. I gave them information that I can give. And as to what will happen with that information, I do not know. But at least the CID says they are investigating, and we are here to see what will happen with that one.
Oh, so how long ago was this that you were invited to aid the CID in this investigation into the Akonta mining in the Nimre forest?
That was last month.
Okay. Well, we'll still follow up on that. But Erastus, we can't thank you enough for this work, leading this particular campaign for the multimedia group, No to Galamsey. And we know that we are not stopping. 2023 is just about to begin. And I know that there are bigger things in the works when it comes to No to Galamsey. Once again, I think it's a good time for us to just maybe give a clap to Erastus for all the work that he did when it comes to...
It's talking about year in reviews. Is my journalist of the year.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes, no doubt.
It's definitely my journalist of the year when it comes to the news. And the Galamsey story dominated the headlines for a while. I think it resurfaced and came back to front burner when Aisha Wan, sneaked back into the country and she was miraculously caught. And then we realized that, oh my God, Aisha Wan was still here. That sort of opened the Pandora's box, and that's what triggered the entire resurgence in the fight against Galamsey. But that whole Aisha Wan story just also demonstrated how difficult this fight had been for this government and their own failings. Because if you listen to the president, for him not to be sure whether she was deported or whether she fled, as the commander-in-chief who receives daily briefings from the national security apparatus, was quite a telling story about the way they managed this whole affair. We know now, post that, thank God for small mercies, that the president committed now that she should be tried and prosecuted.
And the Attorney General had started
doing that. Yeah. And so, we thank God for small mercies. And then also tied, and you need to allow me to do this, tied to that, because all came under the auspices of the Land and Natural Resources Ministry. It's the Sir John matter, right?
Wait, just a minute. I'm going to do Sir John. Could you finish with the word to me? Because I've tipped it. I know that we are going to do Sir John and then walk up, then we can wrap up. I have the presidential gaffe also, and then on social media, the soundbite of the year also coming up. So briefly on Wuntumi, at least Akonta mining, we've been giving some updates that the CID is investigating.
Look, I've got to say that when it comes to Galamsey, I think this is the one topic that must make the president so uncomfortable. I feel bad for him. Because the truth is, this president has the credentials of being a warrior for the rule of law. The credentials are established. That's who he is. So to be the president and find yourself in so many situations where you can't enforce the rule of law, it must be frustrating. But whose fault is it? I don't know. I do feel bad for him though. Because look, Akonta mining, honestly, The videos were clear. They were there. They were in the forest. They wrote to the government. The government wrote back to them, said, what you are doing is wrong. So already the ministry has determined that you are breaking the law.
But he says he had a license.
In writing. Following that, take action, arrest somebody, investigate something. You say, okay, we have to follow due process. Okay, what's due process? The Forestry Commission must investigate. Okay, then, let's watch you investigate.
But they were directed, at least the Lands Minister directed the Forestry Commission to investigate this. At some point, the licenses were frozen, amongst others. So it appears that...
So there was a directive to investigate. And what happened? The Forestry Commission went into the Nimri Forest, to the site where the mining had happened, the scene of the crime, and burnt everything. Is that investigation? They burnt the evidence. By the way, that was the only evidence because they had already moved the equipment back to where they keep the rest of their Kunta mining equipment that is used for legal mining. So if you go there, you won't be able to tell which one was used for legal and illegal. They had covered their tracks there. Then the Forestry Commission came and covered the rest of the tracks. Is that investigation? So, I mean, as the president, superintending over this, he must feel terrible because it is quite clear that he is unable, his government is unable to enforce the law against one of his own people. I'll allow the audience to make of that what they will. But the truth is the president has been unable to make the law work when it comes to Galamsey. And ironically, this is the only thing for which he put his presidency on the line. But again, as a raindrop dodging president, no consequence shall befall him for this.
And we'll definitely follow up on that CID investigation. So from the Nimri forest, let's enter the Achimota forest. And that whale, most popular whale, at least.
Yeah,
I haven't seen any whale like that before.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big story too. Also because, you know, there's a lot of speculation and rumor in the past about how politicians engage in land grabbing, right? They use their positions of power to sort of, you know, amass wealth for themselves. And then, you know, people just dismiss that because there's no evidence. And then Sir John, may he so rest in peace, dies, and then his will comes up. And then we see in his will, and that's the first time I'm actually seeing a will. I haven't seen a will before. I give it to this person forever.
Forever.
You know.
Yes, forever.
And it was astonishing. Just the mere the bravado of it, it just was shocking. The fact that, you know, property that we all know belongs to the state, that in an area that is supposed to be one of those areas that for conservation purposes, the man who was supposed to conserve it, you know, whilst he was alive, was giving it out to people. And willing it out because he believes he owned it. But I must commend, though, whilst looking at that, the Lands and Natural Resources Minister and the way he handled that. He quickly set up an investigation. He asked he first of all declared that nothing from that whale will be quick to Sir John or anybody else we had given it to. And I think we could hold him to that. The fact that he declared that no matter what happens, at the end of the day, nothing from the forest that he has willed will go to anybody. Was a categorical statement he issued and backed up with many, many documents thereafter. And I commend him for that. And we haven't seen that, we haven't had the last of that because part of it is in court. Yeah. I understand it's been contested. You know. So for me that was a big deal.
The special prosecutor also had case to also look into.
Yeah. And then on the Galamsey bit, I remember talking to the Lands and Natural Resources Minister and saying that in fact the CID, this was the last update on this, had the Forest Commission had finished. Sorry, not the Forest Commission. The Minerals Commission, and the Forest Commission had both finished their investigations, and they brought it to him, and he handed over to the CID, contacted him for his side of the story. So they gathered all that, and they handed all that now to the CID, the police, to now do what they will. And he said he had given the authority, based on the evidence that they've gathered, to go ahead and prosecute. The question is, and I remember Asibe Dems also filed a petition, right?
With Martin
still with the CID. Yes. The question is, the CID has not told us what the update is. And I think we should hold them to it. Because if the minister says, I've done my bit, I have given you the information you require, the agencies under me had come forth with what they found, and it's now in your custody, that civil society have also done same with the petition, I think going into 2023, that's one of the things that my good friend Dampari must update us on. I mean, what they are doing on that particular
Have you found out why the police is not talking to the media? It's one of the key concerns for me for
but
this
they issue
year.
statements.
And go, statements. Sometimes you need clarity.
So,
an issue happens in a region, a district, and you need the police to inform you.
So it
and nothing
pains
happens.
me to say this. This strategy is not working for us in the media. It makes our job difficult. But
of course, it's not about the media. Yes,
it's working for the police. It's a brilliant strategy for them.
No, absolutely.
Because nobody is ever going to come and say the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
Right? That
Because
opportunity has
something
been
like
removed.
you go to the Congress, we are the Congress, for instance, you just needed to know the number of police deployment on the ground.
Request it formally.
Nobody
Request
is
it-
ready to
request
speak
it
to
for-
you.
request it formally.
Things happen, and the media needs to ask questions.
I get it. I mean, that's a journalist.
Yeah.
But if you look at the policing, proper policing, and I think he's doing the right thing here. Because we had a situation in the past where every Tom, Dick, and Harry PRO somewhere in Ghana is
But there's a
speaking on
national
something
PRO. Why is the national
and
PRO
saying
not
stuff
speaking?
and getting the police into trouble and being ridiculed, etc. So if you want to speak, get clearance on Accra. Let Accra provide
When was the
information.
last time you heard from any police at the public affairs
I get
department?
you. I mean, as a journalist,
after the
because
exit
we've
of
been used
Christopher?
so much to the past where we can just call any PRO anywhere in the person, and we have when we get them into trouble, we are excited, right? But he has come.
We are not excited.
No, I mean,
we need information.
Yeah. But I think Dampari comes in and realizes that is a problem. I mean, because it's also an image thing for the police.
Okay.
And one of the problems the police faces is image, right?
Okay.
And I think one of the things he's done so well is the PR for the police in terms of trying to rebrand the police. When the pictures of the dogs on the street, right?
As for visibility,
It's
especially in this
beautiful.
season, we need to give it to
I mean,
them,
it's
at
beautiful.
least.
And so
Yes, it's been
that's
good.
why I won't fault him so much. Although it's shortchanging my work as a professional journalist.
That's fine.
I won't if the police is better off for that, I'll take that.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look at the presidential gaffe. I know you have sound bites of the year off the top of your head. Do you remember any sound bites that you know?
I think we are a proud nation,
Proud
proud people. For me,
you know.
I mean, Sika Pendede is the ultimate one, I guess. You know, Sika Nepa Dede. Right?
Well, let me take Shamima's final thoughts, and then we can get the presidential gaffe and the sound bites of the year. Shamima, you have any sound bites that comes to mind?
Emefa. What did you say?
I was asking if you have any sound bites that comes to mind. We are wrapping up at this point. Any sound bites of the year that resonates? Anytime you wake up, you remember that this happened in 2022.
I can't even remember them, but let's select one.
Usika pedede ana.
Oh, Sika Pedede, yeah. That was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sika Pedede. So
Okay.
that works for me.
Well, in wrapping up, though, I'm sure we are looking forward to 2023.
Yes,
And
yes. I mean,
briefly,
we're looking forward to a new year, and we're looking forward to better governance, greater accountability. We're looking forward to conscientious leadership, a leadership that is truly selfless, a leadership that will truly place the interest of the majority of the citizens. We are able and we can. And our president himself believes in the Ghanaian. So it is time to put that Ghanaian again at the center of development. Put that Ghanaian again at the center of progress. Give opportunities to Ghanaians. Ensure that Ghanaians begin to take charge of the commanding height of our economy. Do not let us sell our birthright to foreign interests while we struggle over the crumbs. It is not good enough. So may the year be better. And if I wish you well, may your dreams come to fruition.
Amen.
Kojo, may you find a wife.
Hey.
Evans, may
Amen.
you also be able to buy a Range Rover.
Hey.
Enjoy your life.
Amen. Let's swap the existing car before the Range Rover comes.
Range Rover is the thing.
Hey, thank you very much, Shamima. But let's get into the sound bite. Let's get into the sound bite of the year 2022. The sound bite.
Fellow Ghanaians, as the French would say, l'argent n'aime pas le bruit. To wit, money does not like noise. Sika mpe dede. Where there's chaos, where there's noise, where there's unrest, you will not find money. If you talk down your money, it will go down. If you allow some an unidentifiable person to talk down your money, it will go down.
We are not going to the IMF. Whatever we do, we are not. The consequences are dire. We are a proud nation. We have the resources. We have the capacity. Don't let anybody tell you. Like when Joshua, Caleb, and the 10 others went to spy on the promised land. And only 2 of them came to say that we can do it. And the 10 went around the community murmuring, you can't, da 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 da. We are not people of short sight.
Okay, so that's our soundbite at least. Everybody.
I think that one wins.
Talking about Twitter. Look at it. People are talking about it. So that's the poll. What's your soundbite of the year? Sikampe Dede 80 well, now it's 81.4%, and we will not go to the IMF. It's 18.6%. So you see, Sikampe Dede, l'argent n'est pas nebui.
Indeed.
Well,
it looks like the big soundbites became big through being misunderstood. Yes, through being misunderstood, because the president was actually talking about how speculation can lead to affect the. He was right about that, but the soundbite, of course, was taken to mean something else.
Well, 20 seconds. Let's wrap up. At this point.
I mean, so I'll wrap up by looking forward to 2023. In 2023. Again, politics for me will be key, because then we're going to have the election of both the flag bearers of both the NPP and the NDC, and I think for me that will be key. For the NPP, once that is done, the president is finished, really, because then the focus becomes on that. For me, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, let me look at the news personality of the year, also on Twitter, another poll. Who is the most talked about personality of the year? Wow, Ken Ofori-Atta, 49.7%. Beats President Akufo-Addo, hands down. And that's how we wrap up the year in review for 2022. We've been live on Joy 99.7 FM, also on JoyNews and myjoyonline.com. We see. Thank you so much for being a part of the news year for the year 2022. We promise to remain independent, fearless, and credible in the year 2023. We are JoyNews. I am Emefa Apawu. My colleagues, Evans Mensah, Kojo Yangston, and then also Shamima, thank you so much for being a part of it. Have a good evening.